It's Barb, and I'm so honored that I get the opportunity to lead you in a leadership teaching this weekend. And so, what I wanted to do is I wanted to share one of my very favorite books in the Bible, and I wanted to give you some practical handles on that too and challenge you a little bit. But first, I wanted to ask a question. Are you a high-risk person or are you a low-risk person? A high-risk person is somebody that is daring, exciting, unpredictable. You're fine with no control and absolutely no guarantee. Now, the low-risk person is somebody that likes a guaranteed outcome. They like control. They're the ones that bring an umbrella in case of rain. Like it could be a 1% chance of rain and you're still bringing that umbrella because that's who you are. So where do you fall in that spectrum? I would love to be here. I would love to be this daring, exciting, unpredictable person, but I'm not. I'm more towards like right here. If this is a scale, I'm right here, which is a 4.5. I think, and the older I get, I think I'm going more towards this way, which is not good. I mean, I guess it is good. Anyway, no, it's not, and I'll tell you why. Now I want you to write down the things that you do in a week, specifically church-related. Now, I know you have a pen, and I know you have paper, because every leadership teaching, you have a pen and paper, and you write down incredible notes. So I want you to write down those things that you do specifically for church, whether it's texting a volunteer saying, hey, praying for you, will you be here this weekend? Just wanted to confirm. Is it you're inviting your friends to church? Whatever that is, what is your routine during the week? And don't make it up, because I'm not looking over your shoulder, so I can't tell. It's between you and God anyway. And so what do you do during the week? And now what I want you to do is I want you to look back on the list, and I want you to put, well, this is a high risk, this is a low risk. And I want you to rate those things. Rate those high and low. And if you're not done with this yet, you can pause it. It's the beauty of a video. You can pause any time you want. And so anyway, you're like, well, Barb, why are you even talking about risk? Well, let me tell you, it's impossible to follow Jesus and play it safe. It's impossible. When you choose Jesus, you're no longer leading. He is. The essence of the Christian life is your dependency on God and the unconditional love for others. Both of those things involve personal risk. After Moses' death, God speaks to Joshua, the new leader of the Israelites, and in Joshua 1:6 it says, be strong and courageous. In Joshua 1:7, God says, be strong and courageous. In Joshua 1:9, okay guys, help me out, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And so why did God repeat it 3 times? Because the journey that you will be taken, that he will be taken, has many risks and many surprises. The journey is never guaranteed safe. God was telling Joshua, depend on him, his presence, his power. The temptation is so great to ask for God, please God, give me a risk-free life. I just want a risk-free life. Or I've lived a lot, I've had a lot of risk. Okay, now it's time to be nice and coast into the remainder of my last half of the life. God doesn't do that. It's not guaranteed, and there's no such thing. And the lesson of Esther, which I'm going to be talking about in a second, shows you that. It's a high-risk passage, and it's one of my favorite books in the Bible. It really is, because I read it a lot. I study it a lot because I want to be someone like Esther. And I'll tell you why. It's because Esther was confident in God. Confident in God because she knew she had faith. She knew what he's done in the past. He's been with her all along. She's depended on him through her life. And so because she's seen him be faithful, she's felt him be faithful, she knows he's faithful, she can trust him in the future. Despite all of these circumstances, she still trusted God. And I'll dig deeper into those circumstances. And so the book of Esther tells one story. And I'll tell you kind of what it is. And at this point in the history, and I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to highlight some of the things, and I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of it. So many Jewish people were living in exile in the land of Persia. The king Xerxes after becoming angry with his wife, because basically the wife didn't do what he asked. He wanted her to come in with a crown, and she says, no, I don't want to do that. And so now he's so angry with his wife, and he's like, okay, I want a new queen. I don't need her, because I don't need people following her and her disobedience and her just lack of honoring me. I need to get rid of her and get a new queen. So he chose Esther. Esther was a Jew, but nobody knew that Esther was a Jew. The king didn't know. The palace officials didn't know. Esther was also an orphan, and all of this plays into place. Esther was an orphan, but she had her cousin, Mordecai, was her guardian. So Mordecai took care of her. Let's pick the story up now. And so in Esther 3, chapter 3, 1 through 6, I'm not going to read it. I'm going to highlight it. Haman was King Xerxes' right-hand person. So right-hand person, Haman was. And he battled with sin. He battled with pride. He was really prideful. He had basically the kingdom in his hand along with the king, and he could do whatever he wants. So his pride, he knew that he was it, and nobody can tell him differently. And so when Mordecai, Esther's cousin who raised him, when Mordecai didn't bow down to him, because Haman wanted everybody to bow down to him, when Mordecai didn't, because of his Jewish faith, he not only wanted to kill Mordecai, but the whole entire race. Haman, with the king's blessing, made that proclamation, because of course the king only got a little bit of the information, and that's what Haman wanted to. Haman was so angry at Mordecai that he told the king what he wanted the king to know. So the king's like, yep, do whatever you want to do with them. And so with the king's blessing, he made a proclamation that on the 13th day of the 12th month, all of the Jews in the kingdom would be killed. That would probably be about 15 million Jewish people would be killed. Well, let's continue the story. In Esther 4, 1 through 11, Mordecai found out about that, and then he started mourning. He was publicly mourning because his whole race was going to be killed, including him. And so because Mordecai and Esther had this secret relationship with writing back and forth, Esther found out what the problem is. But being a queen, she had limited access to the world and the palace, and she didn't know what to do, because she had this information in her hand, but she couldn't go to the king, because you didn't do that back then. That was against the law to go to the king. The king had to invite her into his presence. She could never go to him. And so she's like, okay, if she did go to him, it would mean death, on one exception. The exception is if she went to him, and if she had favor, and if he held out his scepter to that one person, then she would be saved. But you never knew. And the chances of that are really, really slim. And so, but she knew she had to go to the king. And so Mordecai spoke these words to Esther, and this is how she knew she had to go to the king. So Mordecai said, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than any of the Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Just means that, you know what? If you don't do this, guess what? You're going to be killed anyway. The palace is not going to save you. But because God ordained this, the Jews will be saved, but will be saved by a different person if you don't step up. And then this is my favorite part of the whole book. And it says, and who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And so Esther was challenged at her dependency on God. What does she do? Does she step into what God has called her, even though her life is in jeopardy? And so, but because of her dependence on God, she's had that confidence in him. Now it led to her wise action, even though it involved risk. And so she said, I will go to the king, even though it's against the law, and if I perish, I'll perish. So what she did was she asked Mordecai to ask all the Jews to fast for 3 days. She's going to do the same with her maidservants. They're going to fast for 3 days, and then she's going to come back together and go to the king. But she did that because she didn't want the reliance to be on her beauty, influence, or her persuasion, her persuasive power. She wanted to be dependent completely on God. And that's what she did. And you can read the rest of the story, but the bottom line is she went to the king at the right timing, different times, and God ordained her steps throughout the whole thing, and the Jews were saved. And so you're like, well, Barb, why are you telling me all of this? What does this have to do with me? Well, Esther had this humongous risk. Her life was in danger. When you look at your list, is your life in danger with the risks that you guys take? But our lives are being governed by the same exact God. After Jesus' resurrection, the Father said, for every member of the body of Christ, there's a purpose, a plan, and a place. We are one. We have the same God and the same Spirit. And just like Esther, God has put you where you are for a reason. And honestly, the older I get, I have that sense of I know that God has a purpose for me. I know that He's ordained the steps, and even if I don't see it, He does things behind the scenes. Like in Esther, in the book of Esther, you see all of these things that happen behind the scenes, but Esther did not know that. All she did was trust God through this. And so consider the people in your life, and I'm going to close this up. Many within your relational network are the people that you routinely see every day. Could it be that God has brought you together for a reason? God often finds people in the middle of their daily routine, and when God is at work, doors open. And at any time, God can guide us to that person that is searching for something. He can arrange events that get us where He wants us to be, even though we don't know He's doing it. God puts us at the right place at the right time to say the right things to the right person. Confidently depend on God that He has put you there for such a time as this, and lives are at stake. And so the reach to our community will determine by the risks that we're willing to take. What risks are you willing to take? That is what I want to challenge you today. Look at your risk. Also, identify the areas of where God wants you to be more dependent on Him. If you're not dependent on Him, you can't possibly take those risks. So be dependent on Him. I love you guys. If you want to talk more about Esther, I would love to talk more about Esther. I'd encourage you guys to read that book because there's so many leadership principles. There's so much to unpack. I could probably take a whole year to unpack each one of them. And so I love you guys. Thank you for letting me speak into you. But now it's up to you. What are you going to do with the risk, the Christian life? Love you.